Good to go? Okay. So we will begin this audit committee meeting. I am present with Counselor Anthony Robin and Counselor Megan Norris. And we are going to start with Partner Moss Adams, Kevin and Amanda.
All right. So I think Kevin's gonna pull up the slides. So I guess I'm gonna look this way if that's okay. Although I know you guys are all behind me. So I don't know if you want me to move or I can always just scoot back a little bit. That way I can adjust you. But I'm Amanda. I'm a clearing war partner with Moss Adams. I work out of our Medford office, and I work entirely with cities and counties, other governments as well, but cities and counties are pretty much where I spend the majority of my time. This is, I think, my third year, well, 2.5 years working with the city after Jim Lanzarata retired. I got to take over for him and got to work with the city for the past couple of years. And I'll let Kevin do a quick introduction of himself. And then are you able to pull up the slides or can I just not see them?
Yeah, getting there.
Okay.
I have too many things open. That's my issue. But we could talk about the agenda in the meantime.
Okay. Well, so, and then Kevin, obviously, is, he's worked with the city for as long as we've worked with the city. He's senior manager. He helps me a lot with review, especially of the technical areas of the audit. So he spends a lot of time doing that and help making sure the team is getting what they need, and then making sure that we're helping follow professional standards. So. Our agenda is actually similar to what you have here on the slide. It's not exactly written the same way, but we'll go through our team, the nature of services that we provide to the city. We'll go through just some of the key areas that we spend a lot of our time. That way you have some idea of what we're doing when we're here auditing the city. We won't go into all of our secrets on what we do there, but we'll kind of give you a high level of the areas where we spend the majority of our time. And then we'll go over the audit reports that we issue, and so essentially our conclusions over the different audits that we perform. And then in addition to those audit reports that get included with your financial statements, we also have an additional communication that's called our required auditor communications. So our audit standards say, in addition to all the good information in the audit report, there's some additional information that's really important to those charged with governance. So the audit committee and city council. And so we'll go through those additional communications as well, just kind of highlight some things about how the audit went and some key items within the financial statements. And then we'll conclude with an auditing update. I won't be a full accounting lesson for you all, but kind of touch on the few standards that are up and coming for that the city will need to implement over the next couple of years. You can go to the next slide, Kevin. So here's just a snippet of your engagement team. Obviously, Kevin and I are here today just to point out some others that are part of the audit team there. Keith Simovic is a partner out of our Portland office, and he is our concurring reviewer. So he provides essentially an independent review of the financial statements. He doesn't work in on the day-to-day audit. It's essentially that kind of quality control. They review our audit reports and the financial statements just from not as much as in the details of everything to make sure that there's nothing that was overlooked. So it's another layer of that we include within our audits. Harvey Wang is the manager, so he's kind of your point person for the audit. He helps the staff and seniors get their work done. He's the point person for them, as well as your team as well, coordinates how the audit is going, and then communicates with Kevin and I as well when there is audit areas that are ready for review, or if there are complications that he alerts us to those so we can jump in and help if needed. And then as part of looking at internal controls, we look at IT. So Jonathan Shelton is a senior manager, so he helps with that process and reviewing the IT internal controls that we look at as part of the audit. Now, that's not everybody, so there's a number of other staff and seniors that are part of the audit as well that are not included on the slide there, as well as we talk about that kind of independent review that Keith performs. Because you have the single audit under the federal awards, we also have a technical reviewer that looks at that in additional time. So multiple levels of review to make sure that we're meeting all of our professional standards and maintaining our independence.
Yes, and shout out to Bailey Lucas, who's a senior who Kimla worked with probably the most. We just didn't have a good photo for her. Or it could have been that she prepared these slides and didn't want to.
And left it out. Yeah. So as part of our audit, we perform a number of services to the city. The first one is that we audit the financial statements of the city as well as your urban renewal agency under two sets of auditing standards. The first one is our generally accepted auditing standards that we follow for all audits. And then because you are an Oregon municipality that also receives federal awards, we do follow the governmental auditing standards as well, which results in an additional audit report that we issue as part of our audit. It also requires that we maintain certain levels of continuing professional education with respect to governments, as well as a more heightened awareness about independence. So some additional requirements there. So with respect to the city's financial statements, the city does, management prepares financial statements that also obtain the GFOA award for your ACFR. And so this is additional information that is not required under the generally accepted accounting principles. So GASB doesn't require these additional schedules, but if you were to look at your financial statements or your ACFR, the information at the back called the statistical information, and then there's some information at the front called the introductory information. That's not required other than to obtain this award. And the city's received this award for a number of years, which means that your financial statements are put together well, are easy to read and understand. And so it continues to get that award.
Every year since 1993.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, it's a
FYI.
yeah, very long time. And so as part of our audit, we do take that into consideration when we are reviewing the financial statements. It makes me a little bit pickier of a reviewer when I review the financial statements than if you're not obtaining that award. I do actually volunteer for the certificate program as well. So I review other entities' financial statements to make sure that they're complying with the GFOA requirements as well. So a little bit, so I'm sure my comments come across sometimes a little bit more picky than you might otherwise see, but just, trying to maintain that excellence there. And then under the Oregon minimum audit standards, because you're an Oregon municipality, Oregon says that there are a number of compliance requirements that they would like their auditors to look at as part of the audit. Some of these areas include your budget compliance, procurement, how you're investing your funds, where you're investing your funds, and those types of items. So they have a number of areas that they say, okay, as when you're doing the audit, also look at these. And then as a result of that, we issue another audit report. And then the last one is the single audit for the federal awards. So this year we audited 2 awards. We audited your airport improvement program as well as the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, or your ARPA funds. And so we audited those 2 programs this year under the uniform guidance, which results in an additional audit report. And then as the reports that are up here, the first one for Urban Renewal Agency, they get the report of the financial statements that includes our opinions, as well as that additional report under the governmental auditing standards on internal controls. You can go to the next slide. So here's just a snippet of our audit report. I think it's actually 4 pages. So this is just a high level snippet of it. One thing that over the past couple of years, as part of our audit standards that changed, is it put the opinion as the very first paragraph as of the financial or of the audit report. Before, it was kind of buried in the middle, especially with a government audit report that's quite lengthy. And so as part of that, they got moved right to the front there. So you can see we expressed a clean or unmodified opinion over the city's financial statements. So that means we were able to get comfortable that the financial statements were fairly presented in accordance with GAAP, and we did not identify any material errors or material adjustments that were not recorded as a result of the audit in order to obtain this clean opinion. We don't have the urban renewal one up there, but in addition to the city receiving a clean opinion, the urban renewal agency also received a clean opinion over their opinion units. So Kevin at the end is going to walk us through some of our required communications. This is just the kind of the planning pieces of our audit that we go over with you. And then this is our conclusion on those, but then we'll have a number of other items to go over later. So our audit was performed in the time that we thought. You were able to issue your audit before year end and meet the state deadline. And then, as I had mentioned on the previous slide, no audit adjustments were necessary in order to issue that unmodified or clean opinion. So now I'm going to walk through some of the significant audit areas. So this is just kind of high level, what we looked at, what we're asking your team for while we're here in order to express our opinion over the financial statements. So that first item there is cash and investments. Clearly a significant balance in your financial statements. In addition, there are a number of disclosures required for your cash and investments. And then this is one of those areas that Oregon says that there's some compliance requirements that they would like the auditors to look at. And so as you can see on the slide there, based on all of our testing, the balances were properly reported and we didn't have findings to present there. Revenue and receivables, this is a significant area that we look at. Not only are they significant balances, but they are, as part of putting together these financial statements, you do have to follow multiple bases of accounting. You have modified accrual basis of accounting, as well as full accrual basis of accounting, as well as your budgetary basis of accounting. So we spend a lot of time looking at revenue and making sure that you're getting that accounting correct, depending on what type of fund or what type of statement that we're looking at there. And so we really spend some time looking at cutoff to make sure that those are correctly reported. We're also able to get comfort over the balances by some level of confirmations, as well as testing receipts, and as part of our federal award audit as well. So as you can see on the slide there, we found that the amounts were materially correct. That's really going to be the conclusion on all these, given that we gave a clean opinion. But and then capital assets, this is an area that is clearly a very significant asset on the city's financial statements. And so what we do there is we typically get a roll forward from your team. So it has beginning balances, additions, disposals, and ending balances. And we will test a sample of new additions and disposals to make sure those are properly reported. Your lives of your assets or your depreciation and accumulated depreciation is an estimate. So we make sure that you're being consistent there when we're looking at that. And in addition, it's not on the slide there, but one item of note that I actually don't think we have in the slides, and so I'll mention it here, is that you did have one new accounting standard to implement this year that is very similar to what you had to implement last year. So in the prior year, you implemented GASB 87 over lease accounting. So it required you to put all of your leases on your books. This is essentially leases for your IT arrangements. So it's GASB 96 for subscription-based IT arrangements. So essentially leases for those types of arrangements now get recorded in your financial statements as well. You'll see it as a new asset in the capital asset table if you're looking at the financial statements, and then the associated liability in the liabilities section.
So when we were ahead of the game on, right? Like we did that before we needed to. 87.
Yeah, 87. Yeah.
Yeah. And you utilize debt book, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So for long-term liabilities, we perform a number of procedures, and there's a number of different types of liabilities mentioned there. So this is an area that for your bonds and long-term debt, we either confirm balances or we test current payments to make sure that those are properly recorded and reflected within the financial statements. And then in addition to that, you have liabilities associated with your PERS pension, as well as your other post-employment benefit. That's what OPEB stands for up there, liabilities. Those are all based on actuarial valuations. And so we test inputs to make sure that the data that the city is providing to these actuaries is accurate, and then we are looking to make sure that those liabilities are then accurately reported within the financial statements, because they do hit a number of funds depending on where those expenses are recorded. So we do look at that allocation to make sure that it's being reported correctly within the financial statements. There's a number of note disclosures related to those, and so we do test those as well to make sure that they're complete and accurate. I won't touch on this one too much, but financial close and reporting. This is putting together your how many page document? 280 page financial statement. So as part of that, we look to the disclosure checklist to make sure that everything that is included in there should be in there, and really testing those balances. I do a very detailed review of the financial statements, making sure that all of the elements are there, and then they get tied back to all the audit work that we performed over each one of the audit sections, and we found that the financial statements were in compliance. This is really when we're expressing our opinion over the financial statements. All the work that I talked about us doing gets us to this point where we're expressing an opinion over these financial statements and how they're put together. So for your federal awards, I already had mentioned that we audited 2 programs, your airport improvement program as well as ARPA. And if we identified any findings to report, we would let you know about those. For internal control issues over compliance, a little bit different than internal controls over financial reporting. But you can see on the slide there that we had no findings to report over your federal awards that we tested. And then the last one is for the Oregon minimum audit standards that we follow. We did have something that, at least as far as I've been your auditor, haven't had before, but there was for immaterial, but over expenditures, over appropriations this year, which was even if it's $1, it has to get reported in there, unfortunately, under those standards. But so that is one item that we had this year that was unique over prior years.
How many of those were there?
I think there was 4.
Okay.
And then in addition, oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, perfect. No, you can go ahead. There we go. So I talked about all the work and I already went over some of these conclusions. So I'll touch base on these again, because I want to go a little bit more in depth on a couple of things. And then I'll turn it over to Kevin. So as I had already mentioned, we expressed unmodified or clean opinions over both of the financial statements for Urban Renewal Agency as well as the city's financial statements. So that's the first report that we issue. It's the first one within your financial statements that you read. It is 4 pages, but the gist of it is you got a clean opinion. So overall, very good results there. In the next 2 reports, I'm going to talk about one on this slide and one on the next slide for the Oregon minimum standards, and then as well as our governmental auditing report. We do look at internal controls as part of our audit, and we issue 2 reports that have internal controls associated with them. One of them is the Oregon report, and the other one is the governmental auditing standards report. And I just wanted to highlight that as part of our audit, when we look at internal controls, we don't express an opinion over the effectiveness of internal controls. But if we were to identify an internal control deficiency, we have to evaluate what would happen if an error slipped through the cracks. So is essentially what a control deficiency means, is an error could slip through the cracks. If we believed it to be a significant error, but not material, it'd be something that would be required to communicate to you. If we thought a material error could slip through the cracks, that's called a material weakness, and would be required to report that to you. It would get included in both of those reports as findings. And as you can see on the slide here, and then when we get to the next slide, we did not identify any internal control deficiencies that rose to the level of significant deficiency or material weakness. So the only item that I noted there on that Oregon report was those instances of that you had budgetary over expenditures. In addition, in the governmental auditing report, we do have to look at other areas of compliance that the city may have to follow. We do inquiries if you're aware of any instances of non-compliance with anything else that you have to follow. There's obviously, you have Oregon and federal guidelines, but clearly you have state grants, you have debt covenants. There's a number of other compliance areas that you have to, if we identified any instances of non-compliance that came to our, that we were aware of, we did communicate it in that report. You can see on the slide there, we did not identify any compliance findings that were required to be reported. And then the last one is just over those 2 federal awards, your airport improvement program, as well as ARPA. When we look at internal controls over this, as I mentioned before, this is internal controls over compliance, which is different than internal controls over financial reporting, but this is internal controls to make sure that you're complying with the federal awards. So similar to the financial reporting potential findings, if we identified a control deficiency that rose to the level of significant deficiency or material weakness, it'd be included in this report. And as you can see, very clean report, no control findings and no compliance findings over those 2 awards that we tested this year. So overall, very, very good results. I think you should be proud to have these. Over expenditures, I know hasn't happened, at least as long as I have worked with you. But they're very common. Not that just makes it okay, but it is something that is very common, especially because you have accruals at year end that if get missed, you've also then missed the opportunity to do a supplemental budget. So not uncommon there, and they were very immaterial, but still have to be reported.
When you say material, do you recall what they were?
I don't, but they were
Summarized.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the 4 in total, there was a really small, these were all in transfers, so the budgets as a whole were within budget, but it was in the transfer appropriation line item. So the PERS debt service was over by $169. Borough Juniper Ridge was over by $24,000. Cemetery permanent maintenance was over by $844. And stormwater was over by $12,000.
all right.
Okay, I'll take it from here, Amanda. So a lot of great news about our reports and lack of findings. I think something else that's important to share is that the audit really went off without a hitch in terms of timing of when we issued those reports. So December 12th was when the reports were inserted into your financial statements, both for the city and borough. Some observations I've had from other clients is they are getting more timely financials, but we are still seeing some that maybe they're ready to get the financial statement issued before December 31st, but they're saying we're not ready to have you audit our federal awards program, so we'll do that in the coming year. So kudos to you for getting all of that done, so it was in a position for us to be audited. There, a lot of changes going on with who's preparing the financial statements. So, it's great to see Kimla step up and Sam in her new role. So kind of going through all that, I looked at the last 2 years and I think they were issued on December 12th and December 13th. So really good to be consistent and keep that up. The financial statements have a number of footnote disclosures. That's what helps them be such a large document. Want to share with you based on our history with the city, we're unaware of any major accounting policies that were changed since last year. If there was anything, we'd bring that to your attention. We also didn't really see any unusual transactions that we think need to be disclosed in the financial statements. So everything that was brought to us to audit looked good and didn't require a significant change there. And then, as Amanda discussed earlier, the new accounting standards on subscription-based IT arrangements. There is a disclosure in there, and it talks about the city added 4.8 million in subscription assets and 4.2 million in subscription liabilities. That's common for everyone that's implementing this standard. Basically, there's an asset and a liability, and the net effect is really not that much to the bottom line. And I believe most of the IT arrangements are in your governmental activities part of the financial statements. There's a number of accounting estimates, and management has to make a number of judgments on those year-end balances. In the second paragraph, it lists a number of the balances that have estimates, capital assets, the collectability of receivables with customers. Your leases have some huge estimates on the discount rate and whether a contract may or may not be extended. Those sorts of things sound straightforward, but they really could impact the numbers. And then major liabilities like your pension and other post-employment benefits, those requires extensive estimates such that you rely on actuaries to tell you what those balances are, just like every other local government in Oregon. So nothing unusual there. But we perform procedures over those estimates, those assumptions to make sure that the year-end balances made sense and we don't have any issues there. On the next slide, here's a list of what we think are some of the key financial statement disclosures. If you really wanted to dig in and read about some of that, most of these have to do with liabilities, because I think the user of your financial statement really wants to understand what sort of obligations this city has, and is there anything that they, as well as understanding how those liabilities are determined. So a lot of those things like discount rates and when payments are due are important, and that's what's disclosed in the footnotes. Happy to say there is no difficulties. Our team really likes working with the city. That continued this year. When we asked for questions, we get feedback, we get supporting documents in a timely manner. So I think that's important to hear from your auditor. No significant audit adjustments, including no audit adjustments, as Amanda already said, but also it's great to hear that we didn't even have any past adjustments. These would be errors that we could identify that we'd be okay if they weren't corrected because they're immaterial to the financial statements. So we could still issue a clean opinion, but we didn't even have anything that arose to that level. So really the numbers that we audited from day one are what's in the final financial statement. This slide just gets at there are some risks and exposures, uncertainties the city's is susceptible to, things like legal proceedings. It's not uncommon for a city or a county to have a claim come up from someone in the community or a contractor, and we test that by primarily reaching out to the city attorney to see what's out there, what we need to know about. Is there anything that should be specifically called out in your financial statements? And we weren't made aware of anything in our follow-up with the attorney or in other procedures performed. So really just want to let you know that the financial statements disclose that there's some things that could come up. But there's really nothing we need to call out or the city needs to call out in their financial statements. Happy to say there was no disagreements with management. We've already touched on there's no internal control findings to let you know about. Before we issued our audit reports for the city and borough, we requested management to sign a representation letter that really goes over a number of things in the financial statements and things that we understood during the audit. And in order to issue the reports, they need to sign that, and there's no issue going through that process. We're unaware of any consultations that management had with other accountants. An example might be we want a certain adjustment made and management isn't sure about that, so they reach out to another firm and ask them for their 2 cents on it. Unaware of anything like that. No fraud or significant non-compliance with laws or regulations. I think if we did have something, we would have already shared that with you, but no surprises Amanda and I have to give today. And that's really the required communications for the audit committee to hear about. And then what we just want to finish on is just a quick accounting update, and Amanda, take it from there.
So the GASB's been pretty quiet. This slide actually looks exactly like it did last year, other than the fact that you had to implement one of the ones that was on there last year, which was GASB 96. So there are 3 GASBs for the future that you'll need to consider when putting together the financial statements. GASB 99 is an omnibus statement. So it just has a number of corrections in there that the GASB has identified. So it's worth reading through and see if it has any impact to the city's financial statements, that it would be effective for your next year's financial statements. GASB 100 is on corrections of errors or accounting changes. It provides a little bit more guidance on how you might restate or disclose an error that was found, or if there's an accounting change. So if you implement a new accounting standard, even if it's an old one, because you do have the ability to make some changes, and if there was no prior guidance on how you would report that, this clarifies that. It also mentions how you would correct errors if they were identified in your required supplementary information. So some additional information there. And then the last one is on compensated absences. So you do have a liability to report related to your compensated absences. So this provides more information on what goes into that calculation and what you would report as a liability. That's not effective until June of 2025. It is a standard that actually reduces a little bit information. How you report it in your financial statements right now is you have to track any of your additions or deletions for the year from your compensated absences. Under the new standard, all you have to report is the change year over year. So a little bit less information. And that is rare with the GASB that you report less. So kind of a nice change there. But like I said, there hasn't been any new GASBs that have come out. There's a number of projects out there, but these are what have been are effective over the next couple of years. And with that, we just want to say thank you to everybody on your team. As Kevin mentioned, just a pleasure to work with and getting the information that we need in order to get our audit done and done timely. So just really appreciate that, and then definitely open to questions if anybody has any.
Do you have any questions?
We have our question and answer period when staff leaves.
Yeah, we have that, but anything for the presentation?
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to give a shout out to Kimala. So you've all last met her, but she was leading on the budget team
Yes.
and then got promoted to accounting and financial reporting manager this summer. And she's
Well
Great job.
She truly led this entire effort.
Good
So,
job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you guys.
All right.
Right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.